Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Joey Evans.
Today we're talking about a game that is not a small game even remotely.
Not at all.
Hegemony is the game and government is the name. No, Hegemony is the name, government's the game.
Right.
So this is an asymmetrical game in which there are 4 different factions. Each faction is part of a government. And the government is sort of unnamed.
Right.
It could be anywhere. They even made the money some weird money amount. It's not...
Yeah, but we called it dollars.
We did.
We ignored that.
Where you live in America. And
right.
Being in America, my mind puts on top of this, the American things. That's just the way it is. But before you get into this, I do want to say that the game is about politics.
Right.
But it's about politics on a high level. There's not Democrats and Republicans in here. There's not arguments on abortion or hot button topics. It is, there is free healthcare is a thing in the game, free education, but they're treated as not abstract, because I don't want to say the game's abstract, because it's not.
It's like the building blocks of politics if you had no pictures, no faces, no anything on it. It's just that, the baseline.
Right. So this is a big, grandiose game for 2 to 4 players. Huge. I'm going to show you a very basic overview, and we'll be right back. This is the board of Hegemony, and there's not a lot of cards on it right now, but cards will be placed on it. There's going to be different companies that are going to be opened. These companies have a certain cost to them. They have a certain number of workers. Any workers can go in this one, but sometimes they require a skilled worker. You can see there's different kinds of workers. This is what the companies produce. There's going to be capitalist companies here, public sector companies, middle-class companies. Down here is where unemployed workers, immigration, public services, state treasury, events. And then up here, this is the most critical part of the board, are the different policies that are in play. So we're not going to go over every rule of this game. It would be impossible to do in a short video, but I want to show you each of the 4 factions. Over the course of a game, players are going to play 5 rounds. And in each round, they're going to have a hand of 7 cards. And they're going to play one of these cards as the action on the card. So this one, for example, says pay 15 money to add 6 voting cubes to the bag. Or you can discard the card and not do that and take one of your actions. And each of the classes has a bunch of basic actions, and they're also allowed to do one free action. But discarding the card gives you a base action. The capitalist class is about making money in this game. You're going to have a certain amount of revenue that you're going to be transferring to capital each round of the game. And as you do that, as your capital grows, you're going to be moving this marker up, which is going to get you a lot of points. They are going to be doing that by running companies. Now, when they run companies, they're going to be paying the workers, depending on the salaries and where those are. They're going to be paying the workers there, but they're going to be producing the different goods, which are going to be placed here. The different goods are going to be needed, so this is some education, influence, health, luxuries, and food. So the capitalist, like I said, is all about getting money. Their main opponent is going to be the working class. So the working class is going to be keeping track of their population, and they're going to have all the workers that are going to be going around the board. They're trying to get their workers into different companies and get salaries. They have to use that salary to pay a certain amount of food. Their points are going to be from increasing their prosperity, getting enough luxuries and things to survive, and also by starting different trade unions, which will help them. They have the opportunity to throw strikes and to cause unrest over the course of the game, but if you do that, you're also not getting paid. The middle class falls somewhere in the middle of that. They're also keeping track of their population and prosperity, but they're also running their own companies and producing goods, and they have their workers that will go into companies. So they're competing both with the working class, getting workers into the capitalist buildings or into the public governmental buildings, but they also have their own companies that they can put their own workers in and run different things. So they're kind of halfway between the working class and capitalist class. The state is somewhere in a different situation. They are trying to get legitimacy with the different factions, the other 3 factions, and they want to do so as evenly as possible. They're also trying to score. They're trying to make policies different. They want taxes to be high so they get money, but at the same time, they want the people to be happy. So there's a lot of different things going on with the state, but they're more concentrated. They also have events that they have to handle each turn. Most of these events involve giving out resources to the different folks that are in the game. That will help increase your legitimacy, but you actually have to have resources, so the government needs to run companies to do so. At the end of every round, players are going to be voting on these. Occasionally someone is going to use an action and say, oh, I would like taxes to go down, or whatever they might want to do, and everyone's going to vote on that, and players will be throwing cubes into a bag to match their faction, and then pulling a certain number of cubes, and then players will secretly add influence to affect the vote after that's happened. The government doesn't have any cubes in the bag, but they also get a lot of influence. And each of these, wherever these markers are, is going to dramatically affect how the game works. Like, this is the cost of education. So the education that the government gives might be free or might cost more. This affects the cost of healthcare. This is taxation. All three of those together affect how much the capitalist is paying. The labor market's really critical, because if it's all the way over here, then the capitalists and the middle class can only pay the highest wages to their employees. And the fiscal policy, depending on where this one's going to be, is how many different government buildings are open. So the more that are open, the more places the government has for people to work at, but also the more money the government has to pay out. Immigration is how many different workers are coming in, and foreign trade will affect import taxes, and also how many deals are available at any given point. Now, if it sounds like I'm giving a very, very high-level overview, I am. To fully understand each of the sections, you have a rules aid. So this is the state's rules aid, and this is the capitalist rules aid, and they're both two-sided. And then you also have a little card here that gives you how you score on this card, how you pay taxes, and also the different actions you have. And this kind of gives you more details on each of those. So the middle class rules aid is double-sided here. There's a lot going on in this, and I can't go over all the different actions, but they might be opening up a company, going on strike, increasing wages, and then these cards themselves are going to change things. For example, if I have at least 4 unemployed workers, remove 2 of them, I get 5 money for each unskilled worker and 10 for each skilled worker removed this way. So you're sending people overseas, but you get some money that way. It also lowers your population. Here's draw 6 voting cubes from the bag. 4 of them come out of the bag that aren't your color. I can propose 2 bills with this card. And these are all the cards for the working class. There's going to be a different deck. Some of the cards are the same in each deck, but the decks are very different. So that's kind of a base overview. You're going to play 5 rounds. Each round is going to be players playing 5 cards from their hand, taking an action on the card or one of these base actions that's here. And then you're going to do there's going to be some taxes and production and paying things each round. Then you'll vote on the different policies, and then you set up for the next round. There is then some end game scoring at the end, and that end game scoring is going to be different for each of the players. So, like, for example, the working class at the end of the game gets 1 point for every $10 they have left over. And depending on how many socialist policies, the ones that are the farthest left on that chart I showed you, while the middle class wants them in the middle, the state wants them to match very specific cards that they draw, and the capitalism wants them to the right. There's a lot more rules than that, but hopefully that gives you some idea of how the game works.
Okay, so the first time I played this game, I played it with 2 players because they recommend you do that as a learning experience.
Yeah, you need
so
to.
you play the capitalists against the workers. All right,
Okay.
Those are the 2 that are very diametrically opposed.
Right.
Like the other 2 switch back and forth, but the capitalist and workers aren't normally getting together going, hey, let's take out the government. I mean, I guess you could, but 2-player is fine. It's a good way to learn the game. But for me, this is a 4-player game. I could see it in a 3-player game. You don't play with the government. The government's kind of just is there, and you utilize stuff. But the government just adds icing. There's the interplay between the characters. To me, this is a 4-player game.
It is. I like the government player, which you played. It seems more like the overseer. You get to control more aspects of the game, which is really thematic for me because the government is controlling where everybody else goes and things like that. I do like that.
Oh, man. Okay, so there's a couple things. So first of all, we need to talk about complexity and length because this is not for everybody. I'm not kidding. This is a game that's on the weight of a Fatale Lacerda game, and it's not a short game. Probably anytime we say a length on these videos, someone will come in and say, "Oh, but we played in halftime." It's gonna be 4 hours, maybe 3 if you really are pushing it. But this is a heavyweight, crunchy, long game. The good news is, I don't know that you will ever be sitting there bored.
No, I don't think so either, because you see everyone else play their turns, and it does affect the way you do it. And I think that's what made the time. It's one of those games, it is 4 hours, so you have to look at that, but it does go by quickly. There's a lot to do and a lot to notice.
It's very interactive. A lot of times people throw out this multiplayer solitaire.
Right.
Not even close in this game. Because everything that happens, if wages go up, the workers are happy, the capitalists are not happy, the middle class, I don't know what they're feeling, the government's not, everyone's involved with almost every decision. If the government is giving out free health care, they're sitting there going, I don't know, I don't want to give stuff away for free. People like me, but I'm giving stuff away for free. The capitalist is like, I would prefer people to come to my hospitals, and no one's going to them. The workers are like, yes, it's free, that's fantastic. And middle class is like, I don't know if it should be free. It's interesting because that board up in the top with the policies affects the game in a huge way.
Everything.
And everyone wants it to be a little bit different, which I like a lot.
They do. I think the big thing that hit me about this is how asymmetric it is. Asymmetric is thrown around a lot, the word. But this is like villainous in only the fact that everybody plays completely different. Even to the fact that I want to try different ways. Different ways to win, to get your points. As a capitalist, I was so far behind at the beginning, but it's a slow roll for that roll.
I do wish the game had included some strategy guides.
Yeah.
The designer emailed me some information about that, and I was like, oh, that's very helpful. Because scoring points, it tells you how each person scores points, but knowing how everything works together, knowing what you should do or not do, that's definitely a learning process in this game. And my first time I threw, I was kind of a little lost, and then afterwards you're like, oh.
Yeah.
The middle class is probably the hardest one to play because they have to do a little bit of each thing. The other ones are very focused. I like the government a lot. Let me rephrase it.
I know. I was like, yeah, that's going to be a quote.
I like playing the government and Hegemony a lot.
Yes. That makes a lot more sense.
A very specific thing. So, theme-wise,
yeah,
it's really cool. Everything, you go on strike, you shut down the thing. Wages go up, and you don't like that because now you have less money, but they have more money. So then you can raise the price of food, forcing them to buy for you, but they might import food. It just all comes together. And like I said at the beginning, it's not really... I don't think people will flip a table and walk away in anger. You can add that on top on your own.
Right.
You can call someone else a communist or a fascist or whatever you might yet shout because you can play into those roles. But I really enjoyed that. See, I don't like Vassal Sera games or those big, heavy Euro games often because they're a lot of work. And the theme doesn't particularly help me overcome that work obstacle. In this one, it does. Everything I do in this game, there's a lot of things going on. But everything I do makes sense because, of course this makes sense. Of course I'm going to use influence to influence a vote.
That's the biggest thing that got to me. It's not complexity for the sake of complexity, which a lot of things do. This right here, it's clever. In the way it does certain things, you move things down and then something else goes up and you're like, huh, yeah, that would happen. And it makes sense, which is the incredible part of this game and a rarity in these style games for me, I think.
Yeah, immigration. There's more people coming in, and you're like, yes, I have more workers to get more money. Oh, my population went up. Now I got to deal with that. And I find that to be a fascinating part of this. Not a game for everybody.
No.
For sure. But I think this is a game that, in my gaming group, I have this group of heavy Euro gamers, and they love this game. I think it's amazing. And I get that, because they like these style of games. I usually don't have a lot of crossover with them, but I do enjoy this one. Hegemony for me is an 8. The thing that brings it down and not make it amazing is because it is big. It has a huge learning curve. And sometimes, this might be minor, but sometimes those cards have amazing things, but that would have been a whole lot more useful on turn 1 rather than turn 5 or vice versa. That luck a little bit can be like, oh man, would have been nice to get this early in the game. But the voting is interesting, very interesting. The voting phase, I love that. I like how everything comes together. like Joey was saying, it's not just asymmetrical name. We're talking root. You know,
Big
if you like the asymmetrical stuff in root, this is that just on another level. And while I often say I'm tired of hearing about politics. Politics as a theme in a game, I find to be super fascinating.
Right.
This is a really interesting way of seeing a government interplay and with people, and you can't really argue against it. It's not making a political stand this way. If healthcare is free, for example, taxes by very nature go up. That's how life works, right? No one's going to argue that. You might argue whether you should do it or not, and that's what the game's about. I like it a lot.
I do too, and I will come in at an 8 as well. And I love this game more than I thought I would. I normally don't like this style of games at all. Not at all. I don't like them generally. But this one right here, it's very clever. It came down because, like you said, when you start playing, you don't know where you're going until halfway through the game, and it's too late to pivot. There should have been a strategy game. I think it'd be a lot better on the second or third time. But then as you rotate roles, it's going to get more difficult. And hitting the table, how often? It's not going to hit the table a lot in certain groups. I mean, it's 4 hours. It's a 4-hour heavy Euro. Although the Euro makes sense, the mechanics make sense, it's still a 4-hour game you're committing to that does not have dudes on the map.
Well, there you go, folks. That's Hegemony. It's going to be, I almost would say, definitely a try before you buy, or at least read before you buy, but a very impressive game. I think that we'll still be talking about years from now.
I agree.
I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Joey Evans.
And we're here fighting for the people.
For the people.